Hello, friends. We are very interested to know which cities you are listening to us from, so quickly like and write in the comments where you are from. Also share what shocking stories happened in your city or maybe even with you personally. Subscribe because the next story could be about your city or even your personal drama. Now let's dive into a new exciting story. The sun was setting, bathing the hilly streets of East Nashville in a soft golden light. The shadows from neat lawns and wooden cottages in the craftsman style stretched out, lying on the asphalt. Aidan Bennett parked his silver Toyota Tacoma pickup neatly in the driveway of his home, a cozy sage-colored cottage with white trim. There were two rocking chairs rocking on the porch and a green fern in a ceramic pot on a small table. The air smelled of freshly cut grass and blooming magnolias, a smell that to Aidan had always meant home. He turned off the engine, grabbed a leather bag from the passenger seat, and climbed out of the car. His boots crunched softly on the gravel. Inside the house greeted him with warmth. Not what a radiator or fireplace provides, but what comes from little things. The smell of cinnamon from a candle on the kitchen table, the soft light of a floor lamp in the living room, a neatly folded blanket on the sofa. Aidan kicked off his shoes at the door, hung his keys on the hook, and took a deep breath. This was his corner of the world, a place to exhale after a long day. "Cora, I'm home," he shouted, throwing his bag onto a chair in the hallway. From the kitchen came the clink of dishes and light laughter. "Already? I thought you'd be stuck with those drawings again." Cora's voice was warm, with a slight mockery, as always when she teased him about his habit of getting lost in his work. Aidan smiled, walked into the kitchen, and leaned his elbows on the door frame. Cora stood at the stove, stirring something in a saucepan. Her dark hair was pulled back into a messy bun, and she was wearing the same apron with embroidered daisies that he had given her 2 years ago for their anniversary. She turned around, caught his eye, and narrowed her eyes. "What? Are you going to say again that I cook better than all the chefs in Nashville? Isn't that so?" Aidan came closer, hugged her from behind, and looked into the pan. Chili? You know exactly how to make the evening perfect." Cora poked him lightly in the side with her elbow. "Go wash your hands. The perfect evening has not yet begun. And don't you dare touch the cheese until I tell you to." Aidan laughed, raised his hands in mock surrender, and headed to the sink. This was their ritual light teasing, jokes that never turned into sarcasm. They knew how to balance care and freedom, and this made their home special. Aidan worked as an engineer for a construction firm, designing bridges and buildings, and Cora worked in marketing for a local advertising agency. Their schedules didn't always match, but they learned to appreciate the moments when they could just be together. While Aidan washed his hands, Cora took the cornbread out of the oven, and the kitchen was filled with its warm, slightly sweet aroma. She put the baking sheet on the table and looked at her husband. "How is the day?" Argued with contractors again. Aidan wiped his hands with a towel and sat down at the table, pushing a glass of water towards him. "Yes, as usual. Bob thinks that you can save on reinforcement, and I explained to him for the 100th time that the bridge will collapse in a year if you do this." He shook his head. "Sometimes it seems that I am not an engineer, but a kindergarten teacher." Cora chuckled, placing a plate of steaming chili in front of him. "Well, you like it when everything is your way. Admit it, you like being the smartest one in the room." "Only if this room is our kitchen," Aidan retorted with a wink. "Seriously, I just want everything to work as it should. People will drive across these bridges." Cora sat down opposite her, resting her chin on her hand. Her eyes, dark brown, with barely noticeable golden sparkles, looked at him with warmth. "You're always so correct. This is cute." "Cute?" Aidan raised an eyebrow. "I thought you would say heroic, or at least inspirational." "Don't be arrogant, Bennett," she poked him with a spoon. "Eat before it gets cold." They ate, chatting about little things, about Cora's new project, which promised to be a breakthrough for the agency, about the neighbor's dog, who again dug up their flower bed, about plans for the weekend. Aidan suggested we go to Lake Cumberland, take kayaks, and have a picnic. Cora thought, tapping her fingers on the table. "It sounds tempting, but I have a meeting with a client on Saturday. New contract important. Maybe on Sunday. Agreed, Aiden nodded. Only without a laptop. You're always in touch anyway. Cora rolled her eyes, but smiled. Yes, boss. But don't take your drawings either. Otherwise, I know how you rest. They laughed, and for a moment everything was perfect. The light in the kitchen was soft, the food was warm, and their conversations were as cozy as a blanket on the couch. Aiden looked at Cora and thought how lucky he was. 5 years of marriage, and he still felt the same warmth in his chest as on their wedding day. They weren't the perfect couple from the movies, they had arguments and misunderstandings, but they always found a way to work things out. Respect, care, trust, this was the foundation of their home. After dinner, Aiden volunteered to do the dishes while Cora settled down on the couch with a glass of wine and a book. He heard her turning the pages, and that was another sound that made the house come alive. Having finished with the plates, he joined her, bringing himself a bottle of beer. "What are you reading?" he asked, sitting down next to her. Cora held up the book, showing the cover. Atlas shrugged. I decided to reread it. Everyone in the agency these days is obsessed with leadership and mission. I thought I'd be inspired. Aiden chuckled. Is this the one where everyone is so superhuman? I'm not sure you need inspiration. You already outshine everyone in the office. Cora poked him on the shoulder. Flatterer. But, sometimes you want to feel that you are doing something more than just advertising for another startup. Aiden nodded, taking a sip of his beer. He knew Cora was ambitious. Her work was not just a way to make money, she loved challenges, loved to be in the center of events. Sometimes he worried that she was taking on too much, but he was always supportive. If she needed to fly to a conference in another state or stay at the office late, he didn't mind. The main thing is that she was returning home to him. By the way, Cora put the book down, Dexter will come to see me tomorrow. We need to discuss a presentation for a client. Do you mind if we work in the living room? Aiden shrugged. Of course, no problem. Is Dexter the guy who always makes barbecue jokes? He's the one, Cora laughed. Don't worry, I won't let him make a fire in the backyard. It's better not to, Aiden feigned a frown. Our lawn is already barely alive after that dog. They laughed a little more, then turned on an old movie, something about cowboys and the desert. Cora dozed off, clinging to his shoulder, and Aiden looked at the screen, but was thinking about something else, about how they managed to build this life. The house they bought 3 years ago was their common dream. They painted the walls themselves, chose the furniture, and argued over the color of the curtains. They did every detail together, and this made the house their fortress. When the movie ended, Aiden carefully carried Cora into the bedroom. She muttered something incomprehensible, but did not wake up. He covered her with a blanket, turned off the light, and lay down next to her. Crickets sang outside the window, and the moon cast a silvery light on the floor. Aiden closed his eyes, feeling the fatigue of the day fade away. Everything was in its place. Work, home, Cora. Life was calm, stable, and he didn't want to change anything. In the morning, he woke up to the smell of coffee. Cora was already in the kitchen, dressed in a business suit, a dark blue jacket, and skirt. She looked collected and confident, as always before an important day. Good morning, sleepyhead. She pushed the mug towards him. I'm running away. We have a planning meeting at 9. Dinner is on me, okay? Agreed. Aiden took the coffee, watching her pack her bag. Good luck with clients. Show them who's boss. Cora winked, kissed him on the cheek, and ran out the door. Aiden watched her as he stood by the window. Her car disappeared around the corner, and he was left alone in a quiet house. He finished his coffee, put on his work shirt, and got ready for the construction site. The day promised to be long, but the thought that they would be together again in the evening made everything easier. A month later, the morning light filtered through the thin curtains, painting soft stripes on the wooden floor of the living room. Aiden woke up to the familiar sound of his alarm clock, but turned to find Cora's side of the bed empty. The sheet was neatly tucked in, as if she had gotten up a long time ago and didn't want to wake him. He rubbed his eyes, trying to clear away the remnants of sleep, and went downstairs, expecting to find her in the kitchen with coffee and a smile. But the kitchen greeted him with silence. There was a note on the table. Early planning meeting. I'll be back late. 2. Aiden frowned as he reread the short text. Cora often left notes, but this one was somehow dry, without the usual kisses or emoticons. He shrugged off the thought, poured himself some coffee from the coffee maker that she had apparently turned on before leaving, and sat down at the table. Just busy, he told himself, but a slight feeling of discomfort still remained. The day at the construction site was busy, as always. Aiden reviewed blueprints for the new Cumberland River Bridge, argued with a contractor about the quality of the reinforcement, and calmed down an intern who had mixed up the specifications. Work absorbed him, but in rare moments of calm his thoughts returned to Cora. He took out his phone and texted, "Hey, how's your planning meeting going? Is everything okay?" There was no answer. Aiden shrugged, deciding that she was in the middle of a meeting, and returned to the drawings. In the evening, when he returned home, the house was dark. There was no light in the windows, no smell of dinner, no sound of Cora's footsteps. Aiden kicked off his shoes, threw his keys on the cabinet, and turned on the light in the living room. The silence seemed unusually heavy. Usually Cora was already here, cooking, working on her laptop, or just sitting with a book. He checked his phone, no response to his message. The clock showed 7:30. "Cora?" he called, although he knew that she was not there. Aiden took last night's chili out of the refrigerator, heated it in the microwave, and sat down at the table. He wrote to Cora again, "Where are you? Everything is fine." The answer came 15 minutes later, short and faceless. "I'm delayed. The project is on fire. I'll be there soon." He stared at the screen, feeling something unpleasant stirring in his chest. Cora had been late before, but she always warned in advance, called or wrote something warm like, "I miss you, I'll be there soon." Now her messages were as dry as morning notes. Aiden put his phone down, trying to convince himself it was just stress. Her new project that she mentioned was important, a large contract with some startup that could take her career to the next level. Of course, she gives it her all, but anxiety, light as a shadow, had already begun to creep into his thoughts. Cora returned around 10. Aiden heard the front door slam and got up from the couch, where he was watching some kind of sports channel, not really paying attention. "Hello," he said, meeting her in the hallway. "Long day?" Cora looked tired. Her dark hair was slightly disheveled, her jacket hung over her shoulder, and she was holding a bag and a phone in her hands. She threw her bag on the floor and nodded, rubbing her temples. Complete chaos. Clients demand the impossible, and Dexter again rewrote half of the presentation an hour before the deadline. She sighed, "I need a shower or I'll collapse." Aiden stepped towards her, about to hug her, but she had already walked past, heading for the stairs. "There's some chili in the fridge if you want," he called after her. "Thank you, I'm not hungry," came the voice from above, and a second later the bathroom door slammed. Aiden returned to the sofa, but the television was no longer a distraction. He replayed her words in his head. "Dexter. This guy is from her office, a colleague." Aiden saw him a couple of times at the New Year's office party and at the agency's summer barbecue. Tall, with slicked back hair, a loud laugh, and a habit of slapping everyone on the shoulder. He seemed harmless, but his name began to appear in Cora's conversations more and more often. Dexter suggested the idea. Dexter agreed with the client. Dexter thinks that. Aiden pushed the thought away. Jealousy? Seriously. She and Cora were together for 7 years, married for 5 of them. She never gave any reason to doubt her. But still, something in her tone, in her detachment, made him think. The next day, the pattern repeated. Cora left early, leaving a note, "Meeting at 8, dinner is on me." Aiden smiled, deciding that he had just screwed himself over yesterday. But in the evening, she returned late again, around 9, and again without dinner. She walked in, dropped her bag, and headed straight for the stairs. "Hey," Aiden called out to her, getting up from the couch. "Is everything okay? You're kind of out of sorts." Cora stopped and turned around. Her eyes, usually warm, were tired, almost empty. "It's okay, I'm just exhausted. This project, it's going to finish me off." She tried to smile, but the smile came out. "Let's talk tomorrow, okay? I really need to lie down." Aiden nodded, but when she left, he felt the anxiety grow a little heavier. He noticed how she was clutching the phone tightly as she went upstairs, as if she was afraid that it would slip out of her hands, or that someone will see the screen. The following days only intensified this feeling. The cortex became even more withdrawn. Their conversations, which previously could last for hours, were reduced to a couple of sentences. She no longer talked about her work in detail, neither about clients, nor about victories, nor about funny moments at planning meetings. When Aiden asked how things were, she answered briefly, "Everything is fine," or "just busy." Even their usual rituals began to disappear. Morning coffee together. Cora left too early. Evening movie. She fell asleep within 10 minutes or even sat with her laptop. Aiden tried to ignore it, but the little things added up to a picture he didn't want to see. One evening, when Cora was late again, Aiden was sitting in the living room with his laptop, checking work emails. But my thoughts were not about bridges and drawings. He remembered how a couple of days ago Cora put the phone away when he entered the kitchen, or how she shrugged it off when he asked what kind of new client was so important. He opened the messenger to write to her, but stopped. What will he say? "Where are you?" She will answer something like, "I'm delayed." Instead, he closed his laptop and went upstairs to their bedroom. On Cora's bedside table lay her notebook, a small one with a leather cover, which she always carried with her. Aiden never touched her things, but at that moment something prompted him. He took her notebook and opened the first page. Nothing fancy. Meeting notes, client names, dates. He scrolled further, feeling guilty but unable to stop. On one of the pages it was written, D, 19 o'clock, cafe on 12th. Aiden froze. D. It could be anyone. Jenny from her office. Or David, their old client. But it immediately popped into my head. Dexter. He closed the book, put it back, and walked away. My heart beat a little faster. "You're paranoid," he told himself. "Cora works with dozens of people. Meetings in cafes are common." But the anxiety, which had previously been only a shadow, now became palpable, like a cold wind. When Cora returned, it was already after midnight. Aiden lay in bed, pretending to be asleep. He heard her quietly enter, kick off her shoes, and go into the bathroom. A few minutes later, she lay down next to him, but did not press against him as before. Her breathing was even, but Aiden could tell she was awake. They lay in the dark, separated by an invisible wall, and for the first time he thought that their home, their fortress, might not be as strong as he seemed. In the morning, Cora left early again. Aiden found another note. "Meeting with a client. I'll be back late." He clenched the paper in his fist, feeling how anxiety turned into something more, into foreboding. He didn't know what was happening, but he was sure that something had changed. And this something was not just work. Aiden stood at the kitchen window, watching Nashville come alive in the morning. The neighbor's dog barked at the mailman, cars slowly rolled down the street, and the magnolia trees in the backyard swayed in the light breeze. But the house was quiet, too quiet. Cora left early, leaving another note. "Meeting with a client. I'll be back late, too." Aiden crumpled the paper and threw it into the trash can. Her detachment, short messages, late returns, all this no longer fit into the framework of just work. The anxiety that had been smoldering in him for the last few days flared up, and he decided it was time to look for answers. He walked into the living room, took out his laptop, and sat down on the sofa. Yesterday evening, when he found a note in Cora's notebook about a meeting with D in a cafe, did not rest. It could be nothing, just a colleague, a client. But her behavior, evasive answers, the habit of putting away the phone when he entered the room made him suspect the worst. Aiden decided to start with home security cameras. They installed them 2 years ago after a petty theft at a neighboring house. One camera above the front door, another in the living room, a third in the backyard. The recordings were stored on a hard drive in a storage room, and Aiden hoped they would provide some clue as to what was going on. He opened the application on his laptop, entered the password, and went to the archive. The cameras were required to store data for the last 30 days. Aiden chose last night, the time when Cora returned after midnight, and set the range from 20 o'clock to 2 o'clock. Clicked play. The screen flashed and a message appeared. There are no records for the specified period. What the... Aiden frowned and refreshed the page. Same message. He tried it the day before yesterday. Nothing. A week ago. Empty. Aiden scrolled through the calendar app, checking each day for the past month. Not a single entry. The archive was empty, as if the cameras weren't working at all. My heart beat faster. This couldn't have been an accident. Damn it, he muttered, feeling his palms become damp. Aiden logged into the system's admin panel. As an engineer, he knew enough about technology to read logs and look for glitches. Everything was recorded in the event log: activation, disabling, settings changes. But the logs for the last month were almost empty. The only records showed that the system worked correctly until March 1st, exactly 30 days ago. After that, nothing. No shutdowns, no errors, not even standard notifications about the start of recording. It was as if someone had erased all traces. It's not a glitch, he said out loud to the empty room. Someone did this. He closed the laptop and went into the closet where the router and hard drive were. The box was closed, with no signs of forced entry. Aiden opened it, checked the wires, everything was in place. The hard drive hummed quietly, but something told him that the data on it was either destroyed or overwritten. He returned to the living room, feeling the anxiety form into a cold lump in his chest. The first thought is hacking. Maybe someone gained access to their system. But why? The cameras were cheap, without cloud storage. If a hacker got into their network, he wouldn't find anything of value. Still, the idea of a break-in seemed simpler than the alternative. Someone inside the house had erased the records, and the only person besides him who knew the password was Cora. Aiden took out his phone and dialed the tech support number for the company that supplied the cameras. After several minutes of waiting, an operator answered with a slight southern accent. Safe Home, technical support. My name is Travis. What's the problem? Hello, Travis, Aiden began, trying to speak calmly. I have cameras from your system. All entries for the last month have disappeared. The archive is empty. Is this a glitch or something else? Travis paused, apparently checking something on his computer. State the model and serial number, please. Aiden went to the storage room, found a box of cameras, and dictated the data. Got it, Travis said. You have a local system. The data is on a hard drive, right? Yes, everything is kept at home. Okay. If the archive is empty, this is not necessarily a failure. Maybe someone erased the files. Check your hard drive, it may have been formatted. Or someone with access to the admin panel deleted the entries. Is your password complex? Aiden swallowed. The password was their wedding year, 2018. Cora chose it to make it easy to remember. Not really, he admitted, but I will change him. What if it's a hack? Could someone outside gain access? Possible, but unlikely, Travis replied. Your system is not connected to the cloud, so a hacker would have to be physically on your network. Check your router logs, there might be something there, and also change the password on the router. If it's weak, someone could connect to the Wi-Fi and break into the cameras. Got it, thank you, Aiden said and hung up. He returned to the laptop and opened the router interface. The router logs were as empty as those of the cameras. No suspicious connections, no foreign devices, only their home network. Aiden clenched his fists. If it's not a hack, then someone with access to the router or who knows the password has erased everything. And again his thoughts returned to Cora. That's enough, he said to himself, standing up. You don't know it's her. Maybe the disk has broken. But the words sounded unconvincing. He remembered how Cora put the phone away when he entered the kitchen, how her answers became shorter and shorter. And this note, 19 o'clock, cafe on 12th. Aiden went into the kitchen, poured water, but did not drink. His gaze fell on the camera in the living room, a small black eye that had been silent for a month. He decided to check the hard drive. Taking a screwdriver, Aiden returned to the closet, unscrewed the lid, and connected the drive to the laptop. He launched an old data recovery program and waited for it to scan the drive. An hour later, the result was ready. Nothing. The files weren't just deleted, the drive was formatted and the data was overwritten. Someone knew how to cover their tracks. Damn, he cursed, slamming his laptop shut. Aiden sat on the sofa, staring into space. His thoughts were confused. Hacking, too complicated for their cheap system. Failure, excluded. Bark. He hated himself for this thought, but the facts pointed to it. She knew the password, had access to the router, and was at home during the hours when the recordings were supposed to be made. But why? What is she hiding? He decided to talk to her, but carefully. No charges. Just ask if she's noticed any problems with the cameras. Aiden took out his phone and texted, "Hey, when are you coming? The cameras are not recording. The entire archive is empty. We need to figure it out." The answer came 15 minutes later. "It's too late. The project. Cameras, I don't know, maybe they broke. We'll figure it out tomorrow." Aiden stared at the message. Her indifference only increased suspicions. He changed the password on the cameras and router, choosing a complex combination, which he wrote down and hid in a drawer. If the records go missing again, he'll know who's doing it. But deep down, he was already afraid of the answer. The clock showed noon. It was time to go to the construction site. Aiden packed his things, but stopped at the front door before leaving. The camera above the porch looked at him like a silent witness. At the construction site, the day passed in the usual rhythm. Disputes with contractors, checking drawings, calling suppliers. But Aiden was distracted. At the end of the working day, he decided to do something he had never done before. He dialed Cora's office, the Brightwave advertising agency where she worked as a marketer. Aiden knew their receptionist by name. Linda, a middle-aged woman with a friendly voice, was always happy to chat. "Brightwave, Linda is on the phone," she answered after the second ring. "Hello, Linda, this is Aiden, Cora's husband," he began, trying to sound casual. "Is Cora at home? I wanted to find out what time she would be free. I'm planning dinner." Linda paused, as if checking something. "Oh, Aiden, hi, Bark. She left early today, at about 5. She said she had personal matters. Call her, maybe she's already home." Aiden felt the blood drain from his face. Cora wrote that she would be at work until 8. He clutched the phone, trying to remain calm. "Oh, right, I probably forgot," he squeezed out. "Thank you, Linda. We'll call you." "Of course, dear. Say hi to Cora." Linda answered, and the connection was interrupted. Aiden stared at the phone screen. 5. She left at 5. His fingers dialed her number on their own, but he stopped. If asked directly, she might lie again, and he wanted the truth. Aiden put the phone down and went back to work, but thoughts about Cora wouldn't let go. A lie is no longer just a suspicion. This is a fact. An hour later, he returned home. The house was dark, as it had been in recent days. "Cora hasn't arrived yet." Aiden turned on the light, threw the keys on the cabinet, and sat down at the kitchen table. He took out his phone and texted, "Hey, where are you? It's late. I'm worried." The answer came 10 minutes later. "I was late at work. I'll be there soon." "Everything is okay." Aiden clenched his jaw. She's lying. He knew she left at 5, but instead of being home or even telling the truth, she's making it up again. He stood up and walked around the living room, trying to calm down. But the anxiety turned into something new, anger mixed with pain. He couldn't wait any longer. He needed answers. "Okay, Cora," he said out loud, although there was no one in the house. "If you don't want to talk, I'll find out everything myself." Aiden decided to take action. The missing camera footage showed that someone, possibly Cora, knew how to get around them. If he wants the truth, new measures are needed. Hidden cameras she won't know about, and microphones. He didn't want to come to this, but Cora's lies left him no choice. He opened his laptop and started searching. After an hour on the internet, Aiden found compact devices, mini Wi-Fi cameras that can be disguised and audio recorders the size of a coin. They recorded to SD cards and were independent of their home router. He ordered 3 cameras and 2 microphones for next-day delivery, choosing his office address so Cora wouldn't see the package. It was expensive, but Aiden didn't hesitate. The truth was more expensive. Cora returned at 11. Aiden heard the door slam and walked out into the hallway. She looked tired but put together, her dark hair pulled back into a bun and her jacket slung over her arm. She dropped her bag on the floor and smiled too quickly, too tightly. "Hello," she said. "Sorry it's late. Work drives you crazy." Aiden looked at her, trying to catch any hint of the truth. He stepped closer, keeping his hands in his pockets so as not to show his tension. "Everything is fine?" he asked. "You're kind of, I don't know, it's been distant lately. I'm worried." Cora sighed, rubbing her temples. "Aiden, it's okay. It's just that this project, it's exhausting. Clients, deadlines, Dexter with his ideas." She shook her head. "I'm just tired, really." "Dexter?" he asked, trying to sound neutral. "Him again?" Cora rolled her eyes, but her smile was forced. "Yes, he always interferes with his genius edits." "Never mind." She stepped towards the stairs. "I need a shower. We'll talk tomorrow, okay?" Aiden nodded, but inside everything was boiling. He decided to try again. "Listen, I called your office today," he said, watching her reaction. "I wanted to know when you would be free. Linda said you left at 5. Cora froze mid-step. Her shoulders tensed, but she turned around with the same smile. "At 5? She asked again, as if surprised. "Oh, she must have got it wrong. I was at a meeting with a client in a cafe. Work, you know, is not only in the office." Aiden looked into her eyes, but she looked away, straightening her hair. "You could have just said it," he continued, trying not to break down. "I don't mind, it's just. You're somewhere all the time, and I don't know what's going on." Cora frowned, her voice becoming harsher. "Aiden, are you serious? I am working. Are you getting paranoid because I'm late?" She shook her head. "I need a shower. Let's not make a scene." She went upstairs, and a minute later the bathroom door slammed. Aiden remained in the hallway, feeling his anger turn to pain. She's lying. He knew it, and her reaction is not fatigue, but protection. He didn't bother to catch up with her. Instead, he returned to the living room, opened his laptop, and checked the order status. "Cameras and microphones will be there tomorrow. The order has been confirmed." The next day, Aiden picked up the package at the office. Returning home, Cora had already left for her next meeting. He unpacked the devices. The cameras were tiny, about the size of a button, with a sticky backing to attach them to. Microphones are even smaller, with a battery for a month. Aiden walked through the house, choosing places. He attached the first camera to the top shelf in the living room, camouflaging it among books. The second is in the kitchen, behind the coffee machine. The third is in the hallway, hidden in a decorative frame. He installed microphones in the living room and bedroom, gluing them under the furniture. The devices connected to his phone through a separate app, and the data was stored on SD cards that he could retrieve later. When he finished, Aiden checked to make sure the cameras were working. The image was clear, and the sound was clear. In the evening, Cora returned at 10. Aiden sat on divan, pretending to watch TV. She walked in, dropped her bag, and smiled again forcedly. "Hello," she said. "How is the day?" "Okay," he answered, looking at her. "And yours? Until late again?" Cora nodded, heading towards the kitchen. "Yeah, the client's got it. I want water and sleep." Aiden watched her walk past the hidden camera. Aiden sat in the dark living room, lit only by the dim light of his laptop screen. The clock on the wall ticked, measuring midnight, but sleep did not come. Cora was upstairs sleeping or pretending to be. The cameras had been running for 2 days now, and Aiden knew it was time to check the footage. His fingers trembled as he opened the app on his laptop. His heart was beating so loudly that he was afraid to wake Cora. He didn't want to do it. He didn't want to see what might be on these recordings. But her detachment, the missing footage from old cameras, her lies, everything indicated that their home, their life, was collapsing. Aiden did not want to be the one who was ridiculed on the internet, a weakling, a cuckold, or whatever they call them. Aiden took a deep breath, put on his headphones, and selected the first recording last night, from 18 o'clock, when he left for a meeting with a contractor and Cora, in her words, was at work. The screen flickered, and the image from the camera in the living room appeared. Empty room, soft light from a floor lamp, a blanket on the sofa. Aiden sped up the footage until he saw movement. At 6:32 p.m., the front door opened and Cora entered the house. She wasn't alone. A man walked behind her, tall, with slicked-back dark hair, wearing a jacket and a wide smile. Aiden recognized him immediately. Dexter. The same colleague that Cora mentioned more and more often. The one whose name came up in her stories with slight carelessness, but too often. Aiden froze, feeling the blood drain from his face. He paused, peering into Dexter's face. His smile was smug, almost insolent. Cora looked relaxed. Her movements were easy, as if she was not just bringing a colleague to discuss work. Aiden clenched his fists, forcing himself to press play. He should have known. In the recording, Cora dropped her bag on the floor and turned to Dexter. "Well, do you want a beer?" she asked, her voice warm, almost playful. "Do you have something stronger?" Dexter grinned, taking off his jacket and hanging it over the back of his chair, as if he had done this 100 times. "Aiden probably hides whiskey in the closet somewhere." Cora laughed loudly, the way she hadn't laughed with Aiden in weeks. "Whiskey. Dream. But there's beer in the fridge. Take it, just don't spill it." Dexter walked into the kitchen, opened the refrigerator, and took out a bottle of beer, the same one that Aiden bought for the weekend. He uncorked it, took a sip, and leaned his elbows on the countertop, looking at Cora. "Your place is cozy," he said, looking around the kitchen. "Aiden seems like a thorough guy. Everything is spot on." Cora rolled her eyes, but her smile was warm. "Yeah, he likes it when everything is under control. Sometimes it's annoying." "Annoying?" Dexter raised an eyebrow, stepping closer to her. "I thought you appreciated him. How's it going? Reliability, or what do you women love in such men?" Cora snorted, crossing her arms. "Reliability is good until it gets boring. He doesn't even notice that I'm somewhere else half the time." She shook her head. "Too busy with my work." Aiden felt his throat tighten. He tore off his headphones, but immediately put them back on. Her words burned. Boring. Somewhere else. He trusted her, supported her career, and never interfered in her affairs. And she. He forced himself to listen further. Dexter finished his beer, threw the bottle in the trash, and walked over to Cora, putting his hand on her waist. She didn't pull away. On the contrary, she leaned closer, her hand sliding over his chest. "Well, since he doesn't notice," Dexter said, his voice lowering, "maybe we can give him a reason." Cora laughed, but there was something sharp, almost cruel, in her laughter. "Reason? The cameras don't work. I erased them a month ago, and he still thinks they are broken. I've been checking them regularly lately." Aiden froze. His heart skipped a beat. She erased the notes. She knew the password. She knew how to bypass the system. This was not an accident, not a glitch. Cora deliberately destroyed everything that could give her away. He felt anger and pain fighting inside him, but he couldn't tear himself away from the screen. On the recording, Dexter pulled Cora close to him, and they kissed long, eagerly, as if this was not the first time. They moved into the living room, directly under the hidden camera that Aiden had installed behind the books. Cora took off her blouse, Dexter pulled off his shirt, and their laughter mixed with the rustling of clothes. Aiden watched them collapse onto the couch's couch, their couch where he and Cora watched movies, drank wine, made plans. Now Dexter was there, and Cora, his wife, was giving herself to him with a passion that Aiden had not seen in a long time. He turned off the recording, ripped off his headphones, and threw them on the table. He was shaking. His chest felt tight, as if someone had squeezed all the air out of him. He stood up and walked around the living room, trying to breathe, but every breath felt like a blow. She cheated on him, in their house, with Dexter, and she laughed at him, at his trust, at their life. Aiden returned to his laptop, forcing himself to continue. He switched to the recording from the bedroom, their bedroom. At 7 p.m., the camera showed Cora and Dexter entering holding hands. Dexter kicked off his shoes, walked to the closet, and pulled out a towel, as if he knew where it was. "I'm going to take a shower," he said, grinning. "Will you join?" Cora smiled, but shook her head. "Go, just don't waste all the hot water. Aiden will notice if the water bill goes up." They laughed again, and Dexter disappeared into the bathroom. Aiden watched as Cora sat down on the bed, their bed, and checked her phone. Her face was calm, without a trace of guilt. She looked happy. This finished him off. He expected to see regret, doubt, but instead, nothing. Only indifference. Aiden rewound the tape. Dexter came out of the shower, wrapped in a towel, and Cora stood up, hugging him. They started kissing again, and Aiden turned off the video. He didn't want to look any further. He felt sick, his temples were pounding, and his heart was breaking with pain and anger. He closed the laptop, but the images Dexter in their home, Cora laughing at his confidence, burned inside him. He got up, walked into the kitchen, and opened the refrigerator. There was another bottle of beer standing there, the one that Dexter didn't finish. Aiden grabbed it and threw it into the trash so that the glass broke. The sound echoed through the house, and he froze, afraid Cora would wake up. But it was quiet upstairs. Aiden sat down on the floor, leaning against the kitchen cabinet. He was shaking. He thought about how he and Cora built this house, how they chose paint for the walls, argued over curtains, laughed, planning the future. It was all a lie. She didn't just cheat, she brought another man into their home, allowed him to eat his food, shower, and sleep in their bed, and she laughed at him like he was an idiot. "How could you?" he whispered, squeezing his head with his hands. He wanted to burst into the bedroom, wake her, scream, and demand an explanation. But something inside stopped him. Cora had been lying to him for months, maybe longer. She erased the records to hide it. She didn't just betray, she planned everything. If he makes a scene now, she will continue to lie, or blame him, or leave. And he didn't want to give her such an easy way out. Aiden stood up, wiped his tears, and returned to his laptop. He copied the recordings to an external drive, hid it in a desk drawer, and changed the password on the app. The cameras will continue to roll, collecting evidence. He didn't know what to do next, but one thing was clear. He wouldn't let Cora and Dexter ruin his life with impunity. In the morning, Cora went down to the kitchen as if nothing had happened. She smiled, poured some coffee, and kissed him on the cheek. "Good morning," she said. "You got up early." Aiden looked at her, feeling anger boiling under his skin. But he forced himself to smile. "Yes, there's a lot of work," he answered, trying to sound normal. "And you? Is it too late again?" Cora shrugged, taking a sip of her coffee. "Yeah, clients. But today, maybe I'll come back earlier. Is dinner on me?" Aiden nodded, looking into her eyes. She looked the same, beautiful, confident, his Cora. But now he saw the truth, and this truth tore him apart in parts. "Of course," he said. "We'll wait." She left, and Aiden remained in the house, which was no longer his fortress. A day has passed since he saw the recordings. He spent the night awake, sitting in the living room, turning over every moment of their marriage in his head. 5 years. 5 years of respect, support, love, or what he thought was love. Cora didn't just cheat, she planned it all, erasing camera footage, lying to his face, making fun of him and Dexter. She called him boring, oblivious, weak. These words cut deeper than her betrayal. But Aiden was not weak. And now he was going to build a defense for himself, financial, legal, impenetrable. In the morning, after Cora left, Aiden took out his laptop and began to act. He knew that divorce was inevitable, but he was not going to leave Cora with nothing but her betrayal. Their home, their savings, their life together, it was all built on his trust, his work, his sacrifices. She didn't deserve a cent. Aiden was ready for war, and the first step was a financial cleanup. He opened their bank's website and logged into online banking. He and Cora had two joint accounts, one for current expenses, mortgage, utilities, groceries, the second for savings, where they put aside for the future. Aiden checked the balance. There was about $12,000 in the checking account and $47,000 in the savings account. It was their money, their shared dream of travel, of a new home, of the life they planned. Now it was his armor. Aiden started with the current account. He transferred $10,000 to his personal account, which he opened a year ago for work expenses and which Cora did not know about. He left the remaining $2,000 for appearances so that she would not suspect something was wrong. The savings account was more difficult. He couldn't close it without her signature, but he could withdraw the money. Aiden transferred $40,000 to his personal account, leaving $7,000. He knew the bank might notify Cora of large transactions, but he figured she'd be too busy with her appointments to check the accounts. The next step was their investment. They had a small portfolio of stocks and bonds managed through a brokerage platform. Aiden logged into his account and began transferring assets. He sold some of the shares, earning $15,000, and transferred them to his account. He re-registered the remaining assets in his name, using a power of attorney that he and Cora signed a couple of years ago to simplify financial transactions. It was risky, she could fight it in court, but Aiden figured that her lies and betrayal would give him an advantage. He paused, feeling his heart pounding. It wasn't just moving money. It was the destruction of their common life, brick by brick. Every click on the keyboard felt like a blow to their marriage, but Aiden didn't stop. He remembered her laugh on the tapes, her words. He doesn't even notice. She was wrong. He noticed, and now she will pay. Aiden took out his phone and dialed the number of his friend Tom, a lawyer with whom he sometimes crossed paths at a construction site. Tom specialized in family law, and Aiden knew he needed advice. "Hey, Tom, it's Aiden," he said when he answered. "Do you have a minute?" "Aiden, old man, of course. What happened?" Tom's voice was cheerful, but Aiden felt his own voice shaking. "I need advice. Due to divorce." He fell silent, swallowing the lump in his throat. "Cora, she's cheating on me. I want to protect my finances so she doesn't get anything." Tom paused, and Aiden heard him clear his throat. "Damn, Aiden, I'm sorry. This is serious. Do you have proof? Infidelity may play a role, but property division laws in Tennessee are complex. What have you done already?" Aiden talked about the translations without going into detail about the recordings. "I transferred most of the money to my account, and he re-registered some of the assets. But I don't know how it will look in court." "Okay," said Tom. "You act quickly, that's good. But be careful. If the court decides that you deliberately hid assets, this could hit you hard. Evidence of treason will help, but ironclad evidence is needed. Videos, correspondence, witnesses, and one more thing you need to file for divorce first. This will give you an advantage. I can recommend a lawyer if you want." "Yes, please," Aiden replied. "And also, a house. It's registered to both of us. How can I protect him?" "It's difficult," Tom sighed. "If you both have a mortgage, the court may divide it in half. But if you have proof that you contributed more, such as a down payment, this can help. Collect all documents, statements, checks, contracts, and don't do anything that might look like cheating. For example, don't sell your house for pennies to your friend." Aiden nodded, although Tom couldn't see him. "Thank you, Tom. Will I send you the lawyer's contact information?" "Yes, take it off. And Aiden, hang in there. It sucks, but you can handle it." "I'll try," Aiden replied and hung up. He opened a document folder on his laptop. There were scans of their marriage contract, mortgage papers, statements. He made the down payment on the house, $50,000 from his savings before the wedding. Cora was just starting her career at the time, and her contribution was minimal. This was his trump card. Aiden began collecting everything in a separate folder, adding screenshots of transfers and account statements. He also copied the camera footage onto several flash drives. If the case goes to trial, these records will become his weapon. By noon, Aiden drove to the bank. He wanted to personally verify that the transfers went through and open another account, this time in a different bank, where Cora did not have access. At the bank office, he was met by the manager, a middle-aged woman with a good-natured smile. "Mr. Bennett, how can I help?" she asked, inviting him into the office. "I want to open a new account," Aiden said, trying to sound calm, "and check a couple of transfers from my joint account." She nodded, opening the computer. "State the account numbers, please." Aiden dictated the data, and a minute later she confirmed. The transfers of $10,000 and $40,000 were successful. He exhaled, but the tension did not go away. "The new account will be in my name only," he added, "and I want him to be as protected as possible. Two-factor authentication, all that." "Of course," the manager answered. "We will set everything up as needed. Do you need anything else?" Aiden thought about it. He and Cora had a joint credit card, and he suddenly realized that she could use it to spend their money. "Yes," he said. "I want to freeze our joint credit card. Is this possible?" "Yes, but the consent of the second cardholder will be required," she answered, frowning. "Or we can close the card if you both sign." "What if I just lower the limit?" Aiden asked. "It can be done. What limit do you want?" $500, he said. It was enough for small expenses, but not for anything serious. The manager nodded, and in 10 minutes everything was ready. Aiden left the bank feeling like he had taken the first step, but there was still a lot of work ahead. Returning home, he called the lawyer Tom had recommended. Her name was Allison Clark, and her voice on the phone was calm but confident. "Mr. Bennett, Tom told me about your situation," she said. "Do you have evidence of treason?" "Yes," Aiden replied. "Video. Clear, with dates and times, and I started transferring money to my account." "Okay," Allison said. "Videos are powerful, especially if they are made in your home, but we need to act quickly. If you want to file for divorce, I will start preparing the documents. Also, don't do anything that could be construed as cheating. Asset transfers are fine as long as you can prove that you are protecting your interests. But don't try to hide everything. The courts don't like this." "Got it," Aiden said. "What about the house?" "Collect all documents confirming your contribution. If you paid more, we can get you to keep the house or at least get compensation. But it will depend on the judge. When do you want to apply?" Aiden thought about it. He wanted to do it right now, but he knew he needed to prepare. "In a couple of days," he said. "I need a little more time." "Okay," Allison replied. "Send documents and copies of records. I'll start working." Aiden hung up the phone, feeling the adrenaline pulsing through his veins. He was on the edge, but was not going to back down. Cora and Dexter thought he didn't notice. They were wrong. He noticed everything, and now he will take everything he can from them. In the evening, Cora returned at 10, as usual. Aiden sat in the living room, pretending to read work emails. She walked in, dropped her bag, and smiled that same forced smile that he now hated. "Hello," she said. "Long day. How are you?" "Fine," he answered without looking up. "And you? Clients again?" To him, VZD, she gasped, heading towards the kitchen. "I want water and sleep." Morning Nashville woke up slowly, shrouded in a light fog that settled on the neat lawns of the Eastern District. Aiden was sitting in his pickup truck parked outside an office building downtown. His fingers clenched the steering wheel, although the engine had long since died. Yesterday, he completed a financial cleanup, transferring most of the money from joint accounts to his personal account and re-registering assets. The camera footage of Cora's betrayal with Dexter was securely hidden on flash drives. The pain from what he had seen still ate at him from the inside, but his anger turned into cold determination. Today, he was going to take the next step, file for divorce, and protect himself from any attempts by Cora to turn everything in his favor. The lawyer's office, Allison Clark's, was on the third floor of a modern building with large windows and a Clark and Associates sign. Aiden entered the hall, where he was greeted by the smell of freshly brewed coffee and the quiet hum of conversation. The secretary, a young woman with perfect hair, smiled and pointed to the elevator. Miss Clark is waiting for you, Mr. Bennett. Cabinet 304. Aiden nodded, feeling his heartbeat a little faster. He was not ready for this conversation, not emotionally, but he understood that he could not retreat. In the elevator, he adjusted the collar of his shirt, trying to concentrate. Cora still had no idea that he knew. Her morning smiles, her good morning, and a light kiss on the cheek before leaving all this was a lie, polished to perfection. But soon her game will end. Allison's office was spacious, overlooking downtown Nashville. The walls were decorated with diplomas and photographs, and there was a neat glass paperweight on the table. Allison herself, a woman in her 40s with short brown hair and piercing eyes, rose from the table, extending her hand. "Mr. Bennett, good to see you." "Have a seat," she said, pointing to a leather chair. Her voice was calm but firm, like that of a person accustomed to understanding the chaos of other people's lives. "Thank you," Aiden replied, sitting down. He put a folder with documents on the table, statements, mortgage papers, copies of records on a flash drive. "This is all I collected. And call me Aiden." Allison nodded, opening the folder. She quickly scanned the papers, her eyes skimming over the lines with professional speed. "Great, you are well prepared. Let's get started. You said that you have evidence of betrayal. Tell us more." Aiden swallowed, feeling his throat tighten. It still hurt to talk about it out loud, but he forced himself. "I have a video. Hidden cameras in the house. They show Cora, my wife, with another man. In the living room, in the bedroom." He fell silent, clenching his fists. "They laughed at me. She admitted that she erased the footage from our old cameras so that I wouldn't find out anything." Allison looked up, her face remaining neutral, but there was a flicker of sympathy in her eyes. "This is strong evidence, Aiden. In Tennessee, adultery can affect the division of property, especially if we can prove that she acted intentionally. Did you bring the notes?" Aiden took the flash drive out of his pocket and placed it on the table. "Everything is here. I keep copies in other places, just in case." "Smart," Allison nodded, connecting the flash drive to her laptop. "I'll look at them later, but I can already say now, this will give us an advantage." "What do you want to achieve? Full control over your home, minimize child support, or something else?" Aiden leaned back in his chair, looking out the window. He had already thought about it, but the words were still hard to come by. "I want a divorce, and so that she doesn't get anything. The house, the savings, it's all mine. I put a down payment on a house. I paid most of the mortgage. She doesn't deserve this." Allison wrote something down on her notepad, her pen moving quickly. "Understood. We have a chance to keep your home, especially with proof of your financial contribution. But Cora can file a counterclaim. For example, accusing you of hiding assets. You mentioned that you transferred money from joint accounts. Tell us about it." Aiden tensed. He knew this could be a problem. "I transferred about $50,000 to my personal account, and he sold some of the shares to remove them from the joint portfolio. I didn't want her to spend it all while I was gathering evidence." Allison frowned, but her tone remained calm. "This is a risky step. The court may regard this as an attempt at deliberate concealment, but we can argue that you were protecting your interests while knowing about her infidelity. The main thing is don't make any more translations without my knowledge, and provide all transcripts so we can show that you acted in good faith." Aiden nodded, feeling slightly relieved. Allison knew her stuff, and that gave her confidence. "One more question," he continued, leaning forward. "What if she tries to blackmail me? For example, will he say that I controlled her or, I don't know, will he come up with something to make me look guilty?" Allison put down her pen and looked into his eyes. "It's possible. In divorce cases, especially with evidence like this, the other party often tries to shift the blame. If she accuses you of control or psychological pressure, we will need witnesses, friends, colleagues who will confirm that you were a good husband. Do you have such people?" Aiden thought about it. His fellow construction workers, Bob and Mike, knew him as a reliable guy. Neighbors Liz and Ted often praised them and Cora for their cozy home. And Tom, his lawyer friend, who was the first to give advice. Yes, there are several people. I can ask them to talk to you. Okay, Allison said. And one more thing, if she tries to blackmail you, for example, threaten with publicity or false accusations, do not answer. Send everything to me. Any messages, calls, letters. This could be evidence against her. Aiden felt the tension in his shoulders ease slightly. Allison wasn't just a lawyer, she was a strategist, and that's exactly what he needed. What about the house? He asked. I don't want to share it. This is my home. I put everything into it. Allison leafed through the papers he brought. You indicated that you made a down payment of $50,000. This is a strong argument. We can prove that your contribution was the main one, especially if her income did not cover the mortgage. But Cora can claim half if the court decides that the house is joint property. I will begin preparing the paperwork to file for divorce with an emphasis on your contributions and her infidelity. This will increase your chances of leaving the house to you. Aiden nodded, but there was still pain in his chest. The house was not just a building. These were their evenings with Cora, their arguments about the color of the walls, their dreams. Now all this is poisoned by her lies. And one last thing, Allison added, closing the folder. When do you want to apply? The sooner the better. If Cora finds out about your actions, she might beat us to it. Aiden clenched his fists. He wanted to do it immediately, but realized that he needed a little more time. The cameras continued to roll, collecting new evidence. If Dexter reappears, it will strengthen his position. Tomorrow, he said. I want to make sure everything is ready. Okay, Allison replied. Send any new evidence. And Aiden, hang in there. It's hard, but we will do everything to protect you. He stood up, shook her hand, and left the office. The street in Nashville was buzzing with cars honking and passers-by rushing about their business. But Aiden felt cut off from this world. His life was falling apart, and he was building a new defense: legal, financial, emotional. Returning home, he checked the camera app. Nothing new Cora left in the morning, and the house was empty. Aiden sat down at the table, opened his laptop, and began writing a letter to Tom, asking him to be a witness. He also wrote to Bob, his colleague, and Liz, his neighbor, explaining that he needed their support in court. Every word was difficult, but he knew it was necessary. In the evening, Cora returned at 11, as usual. Aiden was in the living room, pretending to watch the news. She came in, threw her bag, and smiled the same false smile that he now saw right through. Hello, she said. How are you? Fine, he answered without looking at her. And you? Dexter again? Cora froze for a second, but then laughed. Oh yes, he's back with his ideas. Exhausting. She headed towards the kitchen. Early morning Nashville was engulfed in gray twilight, cold light filtering through the curtains, casting long shadows on the kitchen table where Aiden Bennett sat. A mug of black coffee, already cold, stood in front of him, its bitter aroma mixed with the smell of old wood and a wax candle forgotten on the windowsill. The silence of the house, once filled with the warmth of his and Cora's evenings, was now oppressive, like the emptiness before a storm. Every sound, the creaking of a floorboard, the rustle of the wind outside the window, the distant hum of a car reminded him of the betrayal he had discovered. Cora, his wife, and Dexter, her colleague, weren't just cheating on him. They laughed at his confidence, erased camera footage, called him boring and oblivious. Those words burned deeper than their embrace on his couch in his bedroom. Aiden was ready for war. He had spent the last weeks collecting evidence. Hidden cameras had captured their lies, their taunts, their meetings in his home. He transferred $50,000 from joint accounts to his personal account, transferred assets, and froze his credit card. The divorce papers, prepared by attorney Allison Clark, sat in a folder on his desk, next to statements showing his contribution to the house, a $50,000 down payment from his savings. Flash drives with recordings, his main weapon, were hidden in a safe, car, and office. But today he was going to strike not only at Cora and Dexter, but also at Brightwave, their agency, whose reputation for family values was only a facade for their deception. Under American law, he could sue the company for negligence in supervising employees whose actions caused him emotional and financial harm. Aiden opened his laptop and the screen lit up, illuminating his face with a cold blue light. He felt the anger mixed with pain turn into cold determination. The first step was the trial. He knew that in the United States, especially Tennessee, a company could be held liable for the actions of employees if they occurred during work hours or used company resources. Cora and Dexter didn't just meet at his house records, showed them discussing their lunch meetings in the office using company phones and email. This was his advantage. He opened the camera footage app, selecting the clearest moments. Video from last week. Cora and Dexter enter the house at 6:32 p.m., their laughter echoing through the living room. He took a screenshot of their kiss near the sofa, cropping the frame so that their faces were visible but without unnecessary details. Another screenshot. Cora in the kitchen says, "I erased the recordings. He thinks the cameras are broken." The third is their conversation about the meeting in the office, where Dexter mentions break on the 12th. Aiden collected 5 screenshots, each one like a bullet ready to pierce their lies. He avoided scenes from the bedroom to avoid giving rise to accusations of distributing explicit material. Aiden dialed Allison Clark, whose voice had become his source of support in the chaos. "Allison, this is Aiden," he said when she answered. "I want to file a lawsuit against Brightwave for negligence in the supervision of Cora and Dexter. Their affair took place during working hours. They used the office, telephones, and mail. This caused me mental damage, and also a divorce and a lawsuit against Cora and Dexter for violation of the marriage contract." Allison paused, her breathing barely audible. "This is a bold move, Aiden," she finally said. "In Tennessee, a company can be held liable for employee actions if they occurred as part of their job or if the company failed to take steps to prevent it. Your evidence video, correspondence, mentions of the office is strong. We can sue for careless supervision, negligent supervision, alleging that Brightwave failed to control employee behavior that resulted in your damages. But we need to prove that their actions directly affected you emotionally, financially. Are you ready for this?" "Yes," Aiden answered, clutching his mug until his fingers turned white. "They ruined my life. Let everyone pay." "Okay," Allison said. "I will begin preparing a lawsuit against Brightwave today. The documents for divorce are already ready. We will submit them at the same time. We will also include a lawsuit against Cora and Dexter for moral damages and violation of the marriage contract. Send me new entries if you have them. And Aiden, it's going to be hard. The company may hire expensive lawyers, but we have an advantage, your evidence." "Thank you," he said and hung up. Aiden leaned back in his chair, looking at his empty mug. His heart beat evenly, but the storm was still raging inside. He imagined Lorraine West, CEO of Brightwave, receiving a subpoena. An agency whose reputation was built on family values will be forced to explain why its employees used work time to have an affair that destroyed someone else's family. Under American law, the company could be held liable for careless supervision or even for creating a hostile work environment if he proves that their actions affected his reputation and emotional state. He knew it was risky. Tennessee courts could be unpredictable, but he was prepared. The next step was to increase the pressure. Aiden decided to send the screenshots to Brightwave anonymously to initiate an internal review. Not only will this weaken Cora and Dexter's position, but it will also give him more leverage in court. He opened a temporary mailbox through an anonymous service and wrote a letter. "Dear Lorraine West and Brightwave Human Resources, the attached materials demonstrate inappropriate behavior by your employees, Cora Bennett and Dexter Wilson, which is damaging the reputation of the agency. Their actions occurred during working hours, including the use of corporate resources. Please check." Anonymous. He attached the screenshots, added the HR address to the copy, and clicked Submit. The screen blinked and the letter disappeared. Aiden exhaled, feeling the tension in his shoulders ease slightly. He finished his coffee, the bitter taste of which now seemed appropriate. Somewhere in the Brightwave office, Lorraine West will soon open this letter and chaos will begin. Aiden closed his laptop and walked into the living room, stopping at the sofa, the same one where Cora and Dexter had laughed at him. He ran his hand over the fabric, feeling how everything inside was shrinking. This house was their dream, their common project. Now it has become a battlefield. But Aiden was not going to give up. He took the money, collected evidence, and sued, and now it has hit their careers. By midday, the camera app showed movement. Cora returned home too early. Aiden turned up the volume. She walked around the living room, talking on the phone, her voice trembling. "Dexter, Lorraine just called," she said. "Someone sent her photos. About us. She's furious and says it's unacceptable." "What the hell?" Aiden felt the corners of his lips twitch. "The letter has arrived." He turned up the volume. "They want us to come tomorrow for a talk," Cora continued. "I don't know who did this, but we're in shit. We need to figure out what to say." She threw the phone on the sofa and buried her head in her hands. Aiden watched her sit on the floor, her shoulders shaking. He expected triumph, but instead he felt cold. This was only the first blow. Cora dialed another number. Linda, the receptionist, had a soft voice. "Linda, Lorraine didn't say what's in these photos," Cora asked. "Oh, honey, I didn't see it," Linda replied. "But Lorraine is as angry as a wasp. The HR department is already digging. Are you okay?" "Yeah, just trying to understand," Cora muttered. She hung up and stood by the window, whispering, "Aiden, is that you?" He froze. She suspected him. But she had no proof. Aiden took care of anonymity. The cameras were invisible. The mail was deleted. Her words only confirmed that she knew. He was not as simple as she thought. Cora went upstairs and Aiden turned off the app. He wrote to Allison, "Sue Brightwave for divorce file today. I'm ready." That evening, when Cora returned, Aiden was sitting on the couch, pretending to watch the news. She dropped her bag and looked at him. Her eyes were full of anxiety. "Hello," she said quietly. "Are you? Is everything okay?" "Yes," he answered, forcing himself to smile. "And you? You look tense." "Work," she muttered, going into the kitchen. The Brightwave outdoor co-working space was noisy like a hive of bees, but today the hum was more like an irritated swarm. Since early morning, employees were talking in whispers, pressing disposable cups of coffee to their lips. The word check was circulating throughout the corridors, and it was clear to everyone a reprimand was coming. Cora appeared in the reception room at 8:45. The eyes have dark circles under them, the palms are wet. All night she fiddled with the phone in her hands, trying to figure out who could have sent incriminating evidence. Lorraine sent her a letter with those very photographs. Clear shots. Cora felt the earth floating away from under her feet. As soon as she placed the cup of latte on the reception counter, Linda raised her head from behind the monitor. "Cora, Miss West asked you to go straight to her." "Conference room, Orion," said the receptionist, avoiding direct gaze and shrugging guiltily. Cora's heart sank somewhere in her stomach. Orion is a large glass aquarium on the 4th floor, where meetings with key clients were usually held. If Lorraine called her there, it means it's serious. Dexter was already waiting. He stood by the window, his hands behind his back, and looked intensely polite, a white shirt without a single wrinkle, a tie the color of wet asphalt, a well-groomed beard. But the cold gleam in his eyes betrayed panic. "Did you make up an excuse?" he hissed as Cora slammed the glass door shut. "It was definitely Aiden," she whispered back. "There is no one else." "We'll figure it out later," Dexter muttered and took a step towards her, as if he wanted to hug her and calm her down. Cora recoiled. Now is not the time. The door opened. 3 came in. Lorraine West, a stately CEO with a sleek silver bob. Sheila Tate, HR director, small but with steel-colored eyes. And Michael Chen, the company's legal advisor, as dry and bloodless as a checkbook. Lorraine closed the door, and the lock clicked. There was a strange pop of air in the hall, as if the pressure had changed. "Sit down," she said evenly. No hello, no smile. Dexter pulled the arm of the nearest chair, but Lorraine sharply raised her hand. "No, standing. It won't be long." Brightwave has built a reputation on trust and ethics, she began, measuring them with a cold gaze. And now I receive an anonymous letter with photographs of two of my senior managers using work time and corporate resources for intimate relations. Cora shuddered. Intimate relationship sounded as demeaning as adultery. That's a lie, Dexter muttered, but his voice broke. Click. Sheila brought up the photographs on the big screen, frame by frame. The room seemed to have turned gray. All the daylight lights outside the panoramic windows became loose and cloudy. Every frame is dated, said Michael, without taking his eyes off the tablet. The GPS tag confirms. The time of shooting was a weekday, 13:02. You have lunch with a client on your calendar. This is fabricated, Cora exclaimed in despair. Someone wants to take revenge on us, Lorraine sighed. Cora, let's not play. We have a regulation on employee conduct. Paragraph 7, subparagraph C. It is unacceptable to use working time for personal purposes that create a conflict of interest and damage to the company's reputation. You two have violated it systematically. Sheila handed each of them an envelope. The envelopes contain notices of a disciplinary investigation and suspension of access to the office. During the inspection, she paused to emphasize the meaning of the words, are suspended without pay. Suspended? Dexter glanced at the photographs as if in a sentence. So you're firing us. Michael adjusted his glasses. The wording for now is suspension pending termination. But, frankly speaking, the outcome is obvious. Cora's fingers clenched. She stood as if on thin ice, under which it crunched and grew dark. Listen, she squeezed out. My results for the last quarter were the best in the department. I bought the company 3 new contracts. You can't. We can, Lorraine answered firmly. Because any contract is worthless if clients see us in the tabloids, and they will see as soon as it comes out in court. Cora felt panic rising in her chest. Court. Aiden is clearly preparing a lawsuit. Everything will collapse. I need your badges and passes right now. System access will be blocked for an hour. Cora unfastened her badge, her fingers trembling so violently that the plastic card slipped and fell onto the carpet. She bent down, and together with the eyes of all 3 of them, it looked like an act of ultimate humiliation. One moment, Sheila suddenly added, Miss Bennett, you were given documents. The courier asked to deliver it personally. Cora blinked, not understanding. Sheila took a thick brown envelope from the drawer and held it out. On the corner was the blue seal of a Nashville private bailiff. Summons and complaint for divorce. Is it a joke? Cora stared at the stamp with today's date. I'm afraid not, Sheila answered without the slightest sympathy. Please sign for receipt. Cora's head began to buzz. The words on the sheets blurred. The plaintiff points out the defendant's adultery as the basis. The letters jumped as if mocking. She looked up at Dexter, who turned pale as chalk, but looked for the door. Aiden, she whispered. He knew everything. Obviously, Lorraine said. Now, if you will allow me, I have a company that needs to be saved from your mess. Security will escort you to the exit. The corridor seemed endless. To the left and right are glass meeting rooms, behind which employees pretended to be working, while they themselves watched the parade of shame. 2 guards walked behind, not touching, but as if pressing me against the wall. Dexter was the first to break down. Damn, he muttered through his teeth, it's all your husband. He figured you out, and now I'm losing my job. Your husband? Cora could hardly hold back her tears. You also used official time. Or do you think they will pat you on the head? They stopped at the elevator. The metal of the doors reflected 2 wounded animals ready to grapple. If I had known what this would lead to, Dexter hissed, I would never have. Oh, come on. You were the first to approach me at that fucking team building, she seethed. You liked that I was married. It turned you on. The elevator opened. The guards nodded politely, please. There was a mirrored wall inside, and Cora saw her lipstick run and her eyes turn red. Dexter stood nearby, no longer the charismatic creative, but a man whose egotistical self-confidence had cracked at the first blow. Security officers were already waiting on the first floor of the elevator to escort them to the entrance. But there was another person standing next to the turnstile, a thin man in a black suit, holding a tablet and several envelopes. "Miss Bennett? Mr. Wilson?" he asked in an official tone. "My name is Stuart Lacey. I am a courier for the district court. You have both been served with subpoenas in the civil suit of Aiden Bennett against Brightwave, as well as the two of you personally." Dexter tore off the envelope and opened it. Civil action for intentional infliction of emotional distress. "He's suing us?" he squealed, turning to Cora. "You said he was soft-bodied. I didn't know," she whispered, feeling the blood pounding in her head. "And that's not all," Stewart added dryly, handing Dexter the second envelope. "Application for compensation for damage to reputation and lost profits." Crap. Dexter slammed his palm against the glass partition in rage. A poster with the corporate slogan, "Trust is our main value," came off the glass. Outside, they were greeted by the March wind. The noise of the big city seemed to mock their sudden silence. Cars picked up dust from the sidewalks, people hurried to work, and two former creative geniuses stood with boxes into which security had thrown their personal belongings. So what now? Cora struggled to hold the box with one hand and wiped her tears with the other. "Now?" Dexter let out a bitter laugh. "You go to court, I go to a lawyer. And by the way, I have no intention of paying for your hubby." "We're in this shit together," she shouted. "You can't blame everything on me." "We'll see." Dexter put the box on the curb and took out his phone. "I have some notes." The bark went cold. Did you record me?" "I stocked up on insurance. I can think ahead, unlike some." He turned and walked towards the taxi, raising his hand. The car stopped. Dexter rattled off the address of the law office and slammed the door. "Hey!" Cora shouted, but the engine roared and the yellow Ford disappeared into the stream. She was left alone on the sidewalk with a defendant stamp and a box of unwanted trinkets. At that moment, her phone vibrated. Aiden. She didn't have time to press accept when the call was dropped and a message arrived. "We received the documents. The process has begun. All questions should be addressed to my lawyer, E." Cora squeezed the device so that it crunched. My eyes burned with tears and anger. "Bastard," she croaked. "How dare you?" But something inside him knew he had the right. She crossed the line, thinking that she would remain unpunished. But he turned out to be not boring, but dangerously calm. That evening, in the empty apartment, Cora was afraid of silence for the first time in many years. Dexter didn't answer his calls. Lorraine blocked her corporate email. Most of the funds disappeared from the bank account. Aiden managed to withdraw the money. He had all the passwords. There were no shirts of his in the closet, which means he took the things. Cora sat down on the floor in the middle of the living room, where she had recently laughed with Dexter, and she became interested in the rustling sound. Something flashed red in the small hole under the shelf. "Camera?" She jerked forward, but the light went out. "Were you watching me?" she whispered to the void. The answer was silence and a roaring in my ears. Aiden was sitting in Allison's lawyer's office at the time, looking over the latest notices from the court. His hands were shaking, not from anger, but from relief. He didn't smile, it was too early. But somewhere deep down, it was a triumph of justice. "Brightwave will most likely offer an out-of-court settlement," Allison said, flipping through the papers. "They don't need a public scandal. With your evidence, we are in a strong position." "Their money doesn't burn me," Aiden answered, looking out the window where the evening neon of Broadway was slowly descending. "I want Cora to understand that betrayal has a price. And for Dexter to learn, you can't build happiness on other people's ruins." Allison nodded. "It will be a long journey, but you've already walked the hardest mile." Aiden closed his eyes. The image of Cora floated before him, the same one who laughed at his jokes about bridges, called Dormouse in the morning baked cornbread. He buried her last night when he signed the statement. Now in front of him was another woman, the defendant, whose laughter would sound in court as evidence. He stood up and put the folder in his briefcase. "Thank you, Allison. We'll start tomorrow." "Be prepared for calls," she warned. When Cora realizes that she is losing not only her job, but also half of her property, she can try to contact directly. "Don't answer." "I won't answer," Aiden confirmed quietly. Night fell over Nashville like a dirty blanket of rain. The puddles reflected the neon signs of bars playing live music. Dexter sat in one of these eateries, half immersed in the shadows. In front of him is the fourth Jack Cola. He was scrolling through the news on his phone. The headline of a local blog was already full of "Brightwave investigates top manager's affair at work." "Damn," he cursed, ordering more. The finger trembled. A familiar figure flashed at the entrance. A tall man in a dark baseball cap walked in and sat down at the counter, just a chair away from Dexter. His face was hidden by the shadow of the visor, but the gaze fixed on the reflection in the bar mirror was familiar. Dexter felt a cold shiver run down his spine. The man took a sip of beer and slowly turned around. Under the visor are Aiden's steely eyes. No emotions, just a statement of fact. "Second shift?" asked the bartender, not noticing the tension. Aiden didn't answer. He picked up the bottle, nodded at it as if it were toast, and put it back. Then he got up and went out into the rain. Not a word. Dexter grabbed the edge of the counter. The alcohol burned his throat, but for the first time that day he felt real fear. Not before the court, not before the dismissal. Before that calm look that read, "Game over." Morning found Cora at the kitchen table, surrounded by paper chaos. Summonses, notices, a terminated contract with Brightwave, printed copies of photographs, the ones with a kiss. My head was pounding. How can I get everything back? How can I fix everything? There were no answers. The phone vibrated again. Unknown number. A woman's voice, cold. "Miss Bennett? This is Cheryl King, Mr. Wilson's lawyer. My client claims that you initiated your relationship and manipulated him. Be prepared. In court, he will provide audio evidence." Cora was speechless. "Anything else?" Cheryl asked. "Yes," Cora said hoarsely. "Tell your client that if he thinks that I will silently take the blow, he is mistaken." "I'm afraid the court will decide," the lawyer snapped dryly and hung up. Cora threw down the phone. He hit the wall and split into two pieces. The silence of the house became deafening. At that same hour, Aiden was standing at the construction site of the new Cumberland Bridge. The gray concrete sparkled with raindrops like a fresh scar. Workers were tightening metal beams, and the smell of wet steel filled the air. Here, amid the noise of welding and the echoing blows of a sledgehammer, he felt alive. Each rumble was a reminder. Bridges are built from strong supports and time, and the bad ones fall. "Boss, we've strengthened the western span, but it's better not to skimp on the reinforcement," Bob shouted, interrupting the pounding of the rain on the helmets. "Not a penny saved," Aiden answered loudly. "We are doing it according to the project, otherwise it will collapse in a year." The words echoed in his head exactly the same as those he had told Cora about marriage. She skimped on honesty, and their bridge collapsed. All he had to do was build a new one for himself. Aiden looked at the river that flowed lazily below them. The water knew. Everything passes both rain and pain. The main thing is to choose the right bank. He took a deep breath of the smell of wet concrete, raised his hood, and stepped to the edge of the span to check the supports. Hammers thundered behind him. Cars honked in front at the other end of the bridge of life, which he was building anew, layer by layer, bolt by bolt. A year has passed since Nashville became not just a city for Aiden, but a battlefield where he defended his life. A year of court hearings, sleepless nights, bitter memories, and cold determination. Now, in early April, a rainy evening enveloped the eastern region in the soft light of street lamps reflected in the puddles on the asphalt. Aiden Bennett stood on the porch of his home, a sage-colored cottage with white trim that remained his fortress. A fern in a ceramic pot on the table swayed in the wind, and the smell of magnolias mingled with the dampness of the rain. This house, his and Cora's dream, now belonged only to him. The court decided everything. A year ago, when the truth about Cora and Dexter's betrayal came to light, Aiden was on the edge. The camera footage, their laughter, their lies, all this tore him apart from the inside. But he didn't break. He gathered evidence, transferred money from joint accounts, hired lawyer Allison Clark, and went into battle. A lawsuit against Brightwave for negligent supervision of employees whose actions caused it emotional and financial harm ended in victory. The company, whose reputation for family values was a facade, agreed to an out-of-court settlement, paying Aiden $250,000. This money was not just compensation, it was a symbol of the justice that he wrested from those who tried to destroy him. The divorce from Cora was final. The judge, having reviewed the records of her meetings with Dexter, found her guilty of adultery. The house, for which Aiden made a down payment and most of the mortgage payments, remained his. Cora received neither alimony nor a share in the property. Her attempts to accuse Aiden of financial manipulation over the money transfers failed. Allison convincingly proved that he was protecting his interests, knowing about her betrayal. The lawsuit against Cora and Dexter for moral damages and violation of the marriage contract did not bring additional payments. The court found that compensation from Brightwave covered the losses. But Aiden didn't care. He didn't want their money. He wanted them to pay a different price: loss of reputation, loss of work, loss of future. Cora was left with nothing. After being fired from Brightwave, she tried other Nashville agencies, but word of the scandal spread faster than she could send out a resume. Her name has become toxic in professional circles. She moved to a tiny apartment on the outskirts, worked as a freelancer, but orders were rare. At night, alone, she sat at her laptop, leafing through old photographs of her and Aiden's life dinners, trips to the lake, their laughter. She couldn't answer herself why she destroyed everything. Dexter, his charisma, his attention, his promises of something more, or her own desire to break out of the routine she wrongly attributed to Aiden. She didn't know. But every time, closing her eyes, she saw his gaze not angry, but calm, cold as steel, and realized that she had lost the person who was her anchor. Dexter also paid his price. His dismissal from Brightwave derailed his career. His attempts to frame Cora by providing audio recordings of their conversations only worsened his situation. The court considered it manipulation, and his colleagues turned away when they learned that he had recorded her without consent. He got a job at a small advertising firm in Memphis, but his ambitions as a top manager were a thing of the past. Dexter avoided mirrors in them. He saw not a charismatic creative, but a man whose self-confidence led to his collapse. Aiden, on the other hand, was building a new life. He invested the money from Brightwave into a house and a new project, a small engineering firm, which he opened with Bob, his colleague from the construction site. They designed bridges and buildings, and their reputation grew. Aiden was no longer just an engineer. He became a man who knows the value of trust and strength, be it concrete or relationships. His home, cleared of memories of Cora, became a place where he found peace. He changed the sofa in the living room, repainted the walls a warm cream shade, and added shelves with books on architecture. The fern on the porch was replaced by a pot of lavender, whose scent reminded him of a new beginning. But one unfinished chapter still awaited its end. Dexter. Aiden couldn't forget his mocking smile, his words about his boring husband, his casual intrusion into their home. The court gave Aiden justice, but something inside demanded the last word, not revenge completion. Friday evening was cool, with a light wind carrying the smell of wet asphalt. Aiden parked his pickup truck on a narrow street in downtown Nashville, not far from the office building where Dexter worked at his new company. He learned Dexter's schedule through mutual friends. He finished at 7 and usually went to the bar on the corner for a drink before the weekend. Aiden didn't plan for a fight or scandal. He wanted to look Dexter in the eyes, say what he hadn't said a year ago, and close this door forever. He sat in the car, watching employees emerge from the glass office doors. Dexter appeared at 1903, still the same tall silhouette, but now with a slight stoop, as if life was crushing him. The jacket was replaced by a cheap jacket, and his slicked hair was disheveled. He walked, looking at his phone, not noticing the pickup truck. Aiden got out of the car, slamming the door a little louder than necessary. Dexter looked up, and their eyes met. For a second, time froze. Dexter stopped, his face pale, as if he had seen a ghost. Unreleased emotions surged with renewed vigor. "Dexter," Aiden said, his voice calm but hard as concrete. "You forgot something." "Call me weak again," he said, his voice like a blade. "Let's stop." A voice came from the other side of the street. Bob, Aiden's colleague, stepped out of his parked van. A police car patrolling the area stopped at the side of the road. Two officers stepped out, their flashlights illuminating the scene. "Say your name," one of them shouted, turning to Aiden. "Aiden Bennett," he replied, raising his hands. His voice was calm, although adrenaline was still pulsing through his veins. "And you?" The officer turned to Dexter. "Dexter Wilson," he muttered, casting an angry glance at Aiden. "This psycho attacked me." "It's a lie," Bob intervened, coming closer. "I saw everything." Dexter pushed him first, tried to hit him. Aiden defended himself. The officers looked at each other. One of them, older, with gray hair at the temples, nodded to his partner. "Both in the car. Let's look into the area." Aiden and Dexter were placed in a patrol car, their hands cuffed. Everything went quickly at the station. Bob testified, confirming that Dexter started the fight. The street surveillance cameras did not work for unknown reasons. 2 hours later, Aiden was released without charges. Dexter was given a fine for disorderly conduct and released with a warning. When Aiden left the station, the rain stopped. Nashville was lit up. Music from the bars on Broadway could be heard even here. Dexter stood at the entrance, rubbing his jaw, his jacket stained with dirt. He looked at Aiden, and there was no longer anger or mockery in his eyes, only fatigue. Aiden stopped a few steps away. He looked at Dexter, and the corners of his lips twitched into a slight, almost imperceptible smile. It was not joy or celebration. It was a farewell to anger, to pain, to the past. "That's it now," he said quietly but clearly. Dexter opened his mouth, but couldn't find the words. He turned away and walked away, his figure disappearing into the crowd. Aiden watched him leave, feeling the weight he had been carrying for a year slowly lift away. He breathed in the cool air that smelled of rain and freedom and headed to his pickup truck. The next morning, Aiden woke up in his house. The sun was shining through the curtains, drawing warm streaks on the wooden floor. He went down to the kitchen, turned on the coffee maker, and opened the window, letting in the smell of lavender from the porch. For the first time in a long time, he didn't think about Cora or Dexter. Their shadows no longer haunted him. He pulled out his laptop and opened the blueprints for a new bridge, a project that promised to be his best work yet. The lines on the screen were as clear as his thoughts. Every bolt, every support, everything was in its place, just like himself. By noon, Bob came to pick him up to discuss a new contract. They sat on the porch, drank coffee, and laughed as if yesterday's fight was just a dream. "Are you okay?" Bob asked, looking at him with slight concern. Aiden took a sip of his coffee, looking at the magnolia trees that swayed in the wind. "Yes," he said. For the first time in a long time, yes. He thought about the Cumberland River, which he saw every day at the construction site. It flowed without looking back, carrying away everything: dirt, stones, memories. Aiden was like this river. He went through the storm, but chose his shore. And now, standing on solid ground, he knew his bridges would be strong, just like his life. Cora sat in her apartment, staring at her phone screen. She found an old photo of her and Aiden on the lake, their kayaks bobbing on the water, and his smile so warm it made her want to cry. She deleted the photo, but the pain remained. She regretted not about the money, not about the job, but about him. About the man she betrayed without realizing what she was losing. But it was too late. Dexter was drinking at a bar in Memphis, scrolling through his news feed. A headline about a new bridge in Nashville designed by Aiden's firm flashed and disappeared. He ordered more whiskey, but the taste was bitter. He knew he had lost not just to Aiden, but to himself. and Aiden drove along the highway, the sun setting behind the hills, turning the sky gold and pink. The radio played an old song about the drive home, and he sang along without thinking about the words. His home was waiting for him, not only the walls and roof, but also the new life that he had built himself. Bolt by bolt, step by step, bank by bank. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think click to the next one.